The long-awaited sequel to Tim Burton's Beetlejuice is now showing in cinemas, so here's my review of Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. When a sequel comes out this late in the game, most people want to know one thing, and that's, was the wait worth it? Does this movie justify its own existence? It's been 30 plus years since the first movie, and I wasn't even born yet when the first one came out, so it really has been a while. For me, it definitely was worth it, and then some. Because I think this movie is way better than the first. That may be a bold statement because this movie did just come out and the first movie is considered by many to be a classic. But me personally, I thought this movie took what people loved about the first movie and amplified it and gave us more. Chief among them is Beetlejuice himself. Despite being the title character in the first movie, there was barely any Beetlejuice in that movie. But with this sequel, the title wasn't kidding. There's double the Beetlejuice because you spend a lot of time with him in this movie, and I really like that. This movie, much like the first, also pushes and stretches that PG rating. Because there are a lot of scenes in here where you just have to wonder how they got away with that in a PG rated movie. That dark Tim Burton style and comedy is very much present in this movie, which is great because I feel it's essential if they want to make a sequel right. It has to feel like the same world people fell in love with all those years ago. So that includes having edgy humor, wacky and gothic visuals, and a little bit of cartoony, gory horror. I also appreciate the lengths they went to make the effects in this movie look like they came out of the 80s. They used practical effects, claymation, and even with the stuff that had CGI, they went out of their way to make it look like something that they would have made in the 80s. Now, I can't talk about this movie without talking about the cast, because this cast is stacked. First up, the man himself, Michael Keaton. At 72 years old, Michael Keaton hasn't lost a step playing Beetlejuice. He's still the same funny and irreverent trickster from the first movie, and you gotta appreciate just how natural he eases back into the role with no signs of rust. I enjoyed his return as Beetlejuice more than I did his return as Batman in The Flash. Winona Ryder also returns as Lydia Deetz, and I like seeing the growth of her character. It's been 30 years, so of course her character is going to be a little different. She's still the girl who sees dead people, but she's also a mom now. So seeing her be a mom to someone who is very much like her younger self is pretty cool to see. Speaking of which, let's talk about Jenna Ortega, who plays Lydia's daughter, Astrid. You'd think that since she's in a Tim Burton movie that she would just be doing another Wednesday Addams, but she's not a rehash of Wednesday Addams. Her character Astrid is still the moody and angsty kid, but out of everyone in this movie, she's the only one who's remotely quote-unquote normal. Much like her mom when she was younger, she too is a moody teenager with issues, but there's a self-awareness to her. She thinks it's weird that her mom is the weird goth lady who sees ghosts, and she knows her family has a reputation of being peculiar people. So she starts out the movie trying to distance herself from that as much as possible. There's also a twist in here that involves her character, which I won't spoil, but I personally didn't see it coming, and seeing the twist unfold was a whole lot of fun. Catherine O'Hara returns as Delia Deetz, and she was so funny in this movie, even more so than the first one in my opinion. We also have Willem Dafoe, who plays this actor who died and is now in the afterlife as sort of an afterlife police investigator. I thought he was one of the best parts of this movie because a lot of the comedy of his character comes from making fun of actors. Now let's talk about the villain of this movie, Monica Bellucci's Dolores. In a world full of sandworms, trickster demons, and ghosts, the most unrealistic thing in this movie is not wanting to be with Monica Bellucci. She plays Beetlejuice's crazy ex-wife, and if I was him and Monica Bellucci was running after me, respectfully, I ain't running. That being said, I feel like her character could have used a little more development. Most of her scenes in this movie are kinda repetitive because she spends most of it interrogating people and asking where Beetlejuice is. It's all build-up, and when they finally do get to what they were building up to, it kinda felt a little lackluster. This movie was an hour and 44 minutes, and I think this movie could have been a little longer, because there are certain characters like Dolores that I feel needed more time and development dedicated to them. Now, despite liking this more than the original, I will say the last 15 minutes or so of this movie were bonkers. It was full-on crazy, and I'm still unsure whether or not it's in a good way or a bad way. Because believe me, the last few minutes of this movie felt like they threw away the script and just did whatever. We're talking Alien Romulus levels of bonkers here, which does feel very Beetlejuice, but I was kind of hoping for a more solid ending. But I will say, another thing I think this movie does better than the original is the character arcs. I think each of the characters had really satisfying journeys to watch. There's real growth that these characters experience, and I really like that. Overall, I'd say I really enjoyed this movie. It's a worthy sequel that gives you more of what you loved about the first movie. I also like that they didn't feel the need to bait people with cheap nostalgia. You know what I'm talking about, the moment in every Legacy sequel where a character says a famous line from the previous movie as if to wink to the audience to get a cheap reaction from them. There was none of that here, and I appreciate them for doing that. Is this movie perfect? No. But for me, it's better than the original, plus the soundtrack is cool too, and it's definitely worth a watch. Also, my favorite character from this movie, Bob.